Oh, my friends, it's an autumn spoilerin time. This is the show where we watch television shows, and these are shows that we watch based on all the information we do on our other show, Cordkillers, that lets us watch shows, and then we talk about them here in a spoilery fashion. And with the autumn TV schedule starting back up big time, we have a lot to talk about, including our library watch of the Larry Sanders Show, episodes 103 and 104. Mr. Robot, episodes 2 and 3 of season 4. The series finale of our season finale of Righteous Gemstones. The Good Place, episodes 3 and 4 of season 4. El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. And the season premiere of Watchmen. I'm Tom Merritt. And he's Brian Brushwood.
Yes, and I know what you're saying. You're saying you got to jump right in. But I tell you what, we have to take a quick sojourn off to the side as we check in on the winter movie draft. Spoiler alert, Brian loses. Like, even when something does well, it's not well enough. What did Zombieland make? Like $36 million?
$26 million.
Yeah. That's half of my money, and I've made $60 million. I'm out. I'm dead.
Still have Bad Boys for Life and Spies and... okay, you're out. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm out. I mean, unless Jojo Rabbit Fever takes hold.
I mean, Jojo Rabbit's going to be a cult classic, but you don't want me to say cult when I say that. That's the problem.
I mean, look, I'm going to love Jojo Rabbit because I love me some Taika Waititi, but no, I do not believe it's going to make decent money.
Did you hear about Disney's handling of Jojo Rabbit? They were considering shelving it because they bought Fox.
I heard that they were flirting with that, but then... But it was coming out.
And then I saw a thing today that was like, hey, where's all the marketing for Jojo Rabbit? It comes out next week. See.
Well, and even Taika Waititi, he tweeted some version of, I have a wacky, quirky, very odd little movie you might want to see. Anyway, remember Thor Ragnarok? I think that was a verbatim quote.
Yeah, something like that. Wow, but Joker sure has made $247 million as an R-rated movie.
I'll tell you what, man, you have a chance to really nail this. I mean, to be at $250,000. Now, the only downside, I was looking, all your other releases get farther and farther into the draft. What, you got?
Cats might do well.
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
I have Doctor Sleep coming up in a couple of weeks. I've got Playing with Fire that same week, which isn't going to do anything. Ford versus Ferrari, which isn't going to do much on November 15th. Then Queen and Slim, November 27th, and Black Christmas, December 13th. Cats is the one that has the best chance to make money because even though it's up against Star Wars, it's a musical and people are likely to want to watch Cats who might not want to watch Star Wars. So it'll probably make some money, especially over the holidays.
We'll see.
It's all about bulk now. I just have a bunch of other movies, all that are going to make small amounts of money.
Yeah.
With Cats making the most out of that batch.
Now that you've seen Parasite, do you think that Movie League Mike did okay with paying $6 for it?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely worth $6. Its problem is it's just not going to play widely enough to generate a huge amount of money, but I think it's going to generate $6 worth for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, where do we begin?
There we go. Let's start with Watchmen. Highly anticipated. It's HBO's big geeky title for the folks who like the Westworlds and Game of Thrones. This is kind of their next offering for them. Like, hey, fans of comic books, you want to watch this? It's Damon Lindelof, but never mind, watch it anyway, because we know a bunch of you hate Damon Lindelof for some reason, probably having to do with lost anger. I am not one of those people. I watched this movie. I am not a huge Watchmen fan, but I have read the comic book and seen the feature film. And I found this to be a refreshing fast forward of that world. That if I were very much into the Watchmen world, I could see some cracks that I might not love, but not being so tied to the intellectual property felt like it was an entertaining and very interesting first episode.
I think I am becoming a full-on Damon Lindelof, not just apologist, but evangelist. I think
evangelist.
Now, keep in mind, he did Prometheus, right? And the lost ending that a lot of people didn't like. I didn't hate the lost ending as much as some other people did. I did absolutely hate Prometheus, but I tell you what, man, the vibe I got during Watchmen, it reminded me of all my favorite parts of The Leftovers. And if you haven't seen The Leftovers, then you've not seen post-adolescence screenwriting Lindelof. I think that he really tapped into something with The Leftovers in world building and giving satisfying conclusions to things. And I felt a lot of that at the beginning of Watchmen. What an astonishing world. What a bold, insane, crazy, perfectly timed, just when I think I have my footing, you're going to knock me sideways. But also, which The Leftovers was weaker than the opening of this because our protagonist was yet another white male. Guess what? We have a very different protagonist now, and I love her. She's great. I gotta tell you, man, I'm all in. I got 23 minutes into this movie, and I walked up and I grabbed one of our producer editors, John, and I was like, "Hey, I'll rewatch this first 23 minutes if you'll watch it with me." And then we ended up watching the whole thing again. It's great. I think it's really onto something. Now, what's interesting is there were 4 different perspectives when we talked about it briefly in the pre-show before the Weird Things podcast. There's me, who's generally cool with Lindelof. There's Justin, who, by his own admission, is too close. Like, it's too precious a story. It's kind of the way I am with The Dark Tower, where it means too much for him. He can't really give himself over to a story. Tell me if this is right. He's obsessing about showing Dr. Manhattan. He's, about Rorschach having this kind of effect. Those are the things that are important to him. Correct. He's very dialed in on you could tell he's on the fence. Between the lines, what he said was some version of, I am deeply worried that Lindelof didn't take away from the comic what I took away from the comic. And I'm terribly afraid he's going to steer this in the wrong direction. Andrew, meanwhile, is just he doesn't have an appetite for Lindelof. He has expressed that what he hopes is that enough people get on him to say, no, it's great, watch it. But he's, guarded. But then what I really want to hear about is Bryce. Bryce, you never read the comic and you never saw the movie?
Yeah, I did not see the movie or know about the comic.
So what was that like for you?
I did feel a lot of that Leftovers sort of vibe where you're kind of in media res in this alternate reality where, the president's different and we have another state, and the relationship between cops and these, I don't know, for lack of a more specific term, domestic terrorist groups is
what certainly is
different.
Presented that way. They like I think it's fair to say, spoiler alert, I suspect that they're going to make things really interesting and make them more sympathetic to us. But as of the first episode, they're certainly portraying the Rorschach cult as some version of the KKK.
Yeah, I mean, not even some version, just, very, very, very overt references there. But then, the squids, the multiple uses of the air raid siren for different things over the whole episode from the beginning to later during the squid bit. I think it's a really fascinating world. I want to be in it more, right? I think that's kind of the thing with that with Leftovers, where the world is fascinating and I want to swim more in it to have a better sense of just direction and gravity.
And when you say you want to be in it more, are you faulting the episode for not delivering that more?
No.
Or are you just saying this was only one episode and I can't wait to have more episodes to experience it?
Right. No, it's too big for one episode. I think this episode was perfectly dense, but more about everyday life, more about the lives of these cops turned superheroes and the KKK turned supervillains. And just the way the multitude of ways that society is different in this version of Oklahoma than our own version of Oklahoma.
I love that one thing they have taken from the comics is the idea that what if we didn't have term limits? What if the president could just stay in office and defeat scandals? In Watchmen, that was Nixon. Nixon's still president in the 80s. And part of that was equating Reagan to Nixon and some of that. But I love that what Lindelof has done is said, okay, when Nixon finally does get defeated, the opposite happens. You get the liberal version of Nixon in office for 30 years in Robert Redford in office for 30 years. And whether Robert Redford is the right choice or not, I think is immaterial. What's important is you now have a world that is the exaggerated version of what would happen if the not Nixons, if the Democrats are in charge of the Oval Office for this long. And it's an exaggerated, protection of identity, exaggerated privacy, as well as a superhero system, which I don't think we fully got the details of, but where superheroes are not quite a regular part of the system, or maybe not accepted perfectly in the system. Maybe they're a little persecuted, but certainly celebrated with. And I love, American Horror Story in this world is American Hero Story about all of the heroes of Watchmen. And then you have allusions to the actual Watchmen characters like Dr. Manhattan and Veidt, Ozymandias, played by Jeremy Irons, as an older version of himself.
Oh, holy cow. Hold on one second. I'm going to have to unpack that. First of all, there was a brief moment that I was worried, like, oh, shoot, am I going to have to pick a favorite between this and The Boys? Because it seems like a lot of the themes are playing in similar spaces. It was not clear to me that Jeremy Irons was Veidt. What's his name?
Ozymandias.
Yeah, but
which one was Jeremy Irons?
Remember the random vignette with Totally Rich Dude, Butler, all that
yes.
stuff?
Oh, yes. And he wrote a play, and he wants to put his house staff as the
Those
leads.
are robots, right? The servants.
Oh.
He certainly was comfortable treating them like robots, but there was no outward indication
also,
that they were such.
They got some things wrong that servants wouldn't get wrong.
Like using a horseshoe to cut a cake. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That made me think, because like with the controlled the controlled gun authorization with the cops, that made me think, oh, maybe knives just aren't as widespread, or there might be a controlled.
Oh no, I
gun authorization to be the Redford effect, right? Which is like we have to make sure that force is only used in appropriate situations.
So, what was it about the Jeremy Irons stuff that made it obvious to you that was Veidt?
The IMDb.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then that's cheating because in the context of somebody who only watched the show, you definitely saw somebody open a newspaper where the headline in bold text says, Veidt definitely is dead. Please don't worry about that character from the comic that you're looking for.
Yeah,
and so I didn't. And so, doggone it. Freaking IMDb. All right.
You should get rid of X-Ray. Just kidding.
Bryce, now come on.
Do you have a sense of what we were supposed to? Obviously, there was connective tissue from the opening vignette to the old man standing next to the hanging sheriff. That
is one of the more leftovery parts of this for me, which is like I got no clue, right? And I'm not supposed to have a clue of why he would do that, because we're very clearly setting him up as someone who you would think be on our hero cop side, but apparently not, and has some complex motivations as to why.
And what do you think of? We didn't really get into it, and I got the vibe that, like I said, Justin, it's too precious to him. He can't really engage on it. But he made allusions to, I guess Lindelof on his Instagram feed said some version of, hey, the Watchmen was all about the existential crisis of the nuclear threat. And that resonated in its time. That doesn't resonate in our time. What does is this identity politics, us, them breakdown. The vibe I got from Justin is that he fears that will not resonate and create as good a story, whereas I think it absolutely does. I mean, I found it riveting personally.
It definitely is going to be a different story. And I think that's where what I said at the very beginning comes into play, which is if you liked Watchmen for very specific reasons, this may not satisfy you. But if you're like, I like kind of like the Watchmen world, and if somebody does something different with it, it ain't gonna bother me as long as it's a good story, then I think you will be free to enjoy this, right? If you're like, I don't care if Rorschach shouldn't have inspired that, right? I don't care if Dr. Manhattan being on Mars is a distracting bit, not an homage. I don't care about all that stuff. And I think a story that's very firmly pointed at the major crisis of social issues today has a lot of potential to be amazing if done right.
Yeah, and I guess that's my.
But it's not international politics, which nuclear war was, right? So I don't know. Maybe it will end up feeling a little less grand than Watchmen did.
Well, and there is a distinction between what actually is an existential threat and what feels like one. I don't think there's any doubt that they've landed on what feels like the existential threat of our moment. And
if you wanted to do that, it would be climate change. That would be the obvious one, right?
Well, man, I don't know though. Climate change doesn't hit you on a visceral level the way this racial divide, this identity politics divide,
because nuclear war hit you on a visceral level and was an existential threat. It's kind of special that way.
Correct. I got to tell you, man. Look, questions are better than answers, and it's been a hot minute since I've seen anything hit me with as many questions this soon, this fast as this pilot did. Now, I will say. Let's take Legion as an example. Legion is a better pilot because it had just as many crazy questions, but it also swooped me in. Like I was all in and I already loved this stuff. Everybody's still a little bit arm's length, but that's kind of how I was at the beginning of The Leftovers, and Leftovers ended up being extremely satisfying.
We shall see. Anything else to say about The Watchmen?
No.
Not yet, but stay tuned. All right, let's talk about the Breaking Bad movie, El Camino, which ended up being the story of Jesse Pinkman and what happened to him after the end of the Breaking Bad television series. We got what I will always think of as Fat Matt Damon, because you put that idea in my head, Brian, but it's Jesse Plemons.
Now he's fatter, Matt Damon. I love you, Jesse Plemons.
Especially in this movie, right?
Yeah.
On purpose. I thought that particular relationship was beautiful and charming, given what I know from Breaking Bad. I'm not sure it works as well if you try to see this on its own, but I don't think this is meant to be seen on its own.
If you go into this movie expecting Kim Stanley Robinson wrote an epic trilogy, Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars, about the hundreds of years of transformation of Mars's environment or whatever. And then after that, he released a collection of short stories called The Martians. And it was quite good if you just wanted to revisit that world at various times with no really rhyme or reason, just a bunch of vignettes or whatever. If you go in expecting that, I think El Camino will be a lot of fun for you. If you expect it to be a cohesive movie, it will not.
I guess it could play in some sense as a character study of an ex-criminal on the run, maybe. Hard to say. But yeah, the big moments, the big points that made me excited all rested on either, oh, right, that's that character's thing from Breaking Bad, or this is the resolution to that thing that was left unanswered in Breaking Bad.
What you're describing, Brian, is how I felt about the Deadwood movie, which I had not seen the show.
Yes.
And I got it. I understand they want the land. They don't want to give the guy the land. At the same time, El Camino is that way, right? They start with him talking to Mike, and you're like, oh, one day, you should go to Alaska. I wonder where the movie's going to end up.
Right.
But I think with El Camino, like, the moments are nice, like the moment with his friends, and they're all trying to help him. We know when you see the vacuum salesman guy again, and the same car.
Yeah. Just a moment. The actor who played him died the day that movie came out on Netflix. Yeah, and he is a national treasure.
Even when Walter Wright shows up at the end, and those two sequences, like those are big pops built on the show, but I don't know if this is the same for Deadwood, but I think those characters and those moments aren't as big pops as they might have been in like the Deadwood movie. Like it's a lot of supporting cast and then a few minutes of Walter White from an early episode.
Yeah, I think I think you're zeroing in on what my gut said, which forgive me, it's just my emotions on this. It was a bunch of answers to questions that nobody had. Mm-hmm. I mean, it
didn't justify
a fine
itself
collection
being a movie.
of cutting room floor short stories, but they fell on the floor for a reason. You know, is that bad of me?
I don't think it's bad of you, and in fact, I don't even think it's inaccurate. But I also think that if you are someone who really enjoyed Breaking Bad, and like you said with the Kim Stanley Robinson analogy, want to revisit that world, this is an excellent revisiting of that world.
Yes.
I was never looking at it rolling my eyes going, why are they doing this? Or what a egregious way to bring Walter White back in. Everything fit. Everything was consistent. No, it doesn't stand on its own. I totally agree with you there. But if you don't need it to stand on its own, then I think it's quite well done and quite enjoyable.
I'll tell you what, though, I found it truly an inspirational journey that someone can age 10 years, gain 20 pounds, and still portray what it's like to be trapped in a hole and starved and abused by terrorists. Like that was a bit weird. That was a cozy Jesse. We saw a cozy
This wasn't
Jesse.
The Irishman. They didn't do any digital de-aging of him or anything. Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Now you had just watched the finale right before you watched this movie, right? So that jump was more. Am I remembering that right? You had watched the last few episodes right before you started.
No, I think that was something else.
I thought because okay.
There was something. Now you've got me reminding of it. Anyway, but point is, good on you, Aaron Paul. Yeah, I agree. You don't have to lose 20 pounds for that role. Oh I'm glad you didn't.
And cheers to Robert Forster. May he rest in peace. Before I knew he had passed, I watched this movie, and I was delighted to see him. And I loved him in Jackie Brown. I love every time he's on screen. And in a way, he sort of stole the show because yes, all the people who were in this, Jesse Plemons, Jonathan Banks' brief appearance, and of course Aaron Paul, they all did what I expected them to do. But Robert Forster, I thought, was an elevated version of the character he briefly played in Breaking Bad. So cheers to that.
Yeah, I did think I liked the way he was able to portray that it was a matter of principle that he was going to turn down the gig over the last $8,000 or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, it felt like teaching a kid a lesson, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like, no, that's not the way it works. And if I let you get away with this, then I'll have to let somebody else get away with it and you'll never learn your lesson. That's just, rules are rules. Sorry, buddy.
Although, I don't know, it did get a bit cartoonish. The whole, like, let's have a shootout. Cocaine, I guess? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, why not? You needed a shootout. I'm not going to turn down a reason for a shootout, are you, Brian?
Yeah, although I would turn down that whole scene with Walter White. Maybe if I'm being as generous as
really?
As
See, I felt like that fit. I was happy with the Walter White scene because I'm like, okay, this feels like it fits into this story. It didn't feel like they came up with a reason to put him in.
I disagree because if the point of that scene was to tell us that Walter White was always an asshole, we already figured that out. If and absent that, what new things did we get out of that whole experience?
Yeah, see, I wish we had just watched this because my memory has now faded of why I felt that way. But my feeling was it doesn't matter what Walter does here. What we're seeing is how Jesse learned from Walter. And I remember thinking, oh, those things that Walter is telling him are now playing out. They are affecting what he's doing now. And that's why we're getting this flashback. I can't tell you what those things were now, which maybe that's why it didn't stick because it wasn't that good.
Okay. One thing we could definitely talk about is our experience because this is the first time I believe both of us have watched a Netflix movie in the theater. I know that I went there in the hopes that I could experience a triumphant revisiting of the Breaking Bad franchise with other like-minded individuals. And it turns out that in my area, I think one other person has a podcast. Because that's the only other person that was in the theater with me. And I felt kind of dumb going to the movie theater to watch a Netflix movie.
Netflix didn't fill the theaters. No,
they really did.
No, they did not. But I don't think they ever tried to. I wonder if they really like marketed this, see it in theaters or at home.
I think they did, because I'm pretty sure it was it was Netflix that paid Aaron Paul to come out to the Alamo Drafthouse to surprise everyone with Badger. When
I'm talking about like the commercials on TV, see it in theaters. They didn't do that.
No, correct.
Yeah.
What is their game plan with all that? Because it's very clear to me after having seen this that this was never up for award consideration.
It might be. There's all kinds of awards it could be up for. Like,
all right.
First of all, there's the best set design, best makeup, best costumes, best effects. There's all of the technical awards for the Oscars. Then there's the SAG-AFTRA awards. Then there's the People's Choice Awards, right? Like just like best director, best film. Of course not. I agree, but they probably think they have an angle on some other awards.
All right, fair enough.
Anything else about El Camino?
It was a bad movie.
It was. You could drop the breaking from the subtitle. Is that what you're saying?
It was just bad. A bad movie. And by the way, that is spoken with all love and affection for all characters involved. If every moment that I got even a taste of that delightful TV experience was a joy. Let me put it this way. All the things I'm saying also true of the 1990s Knight Rider reboot.
Oh my, yeah. I think you just damned El Camino the most by saying that, by comparing it to that. To be clear, and it's not even that I disagree with Brian. I liked it better than that. I wouldn't call it a bad movie, but it's degrees of gradation here that we're talking about.
It wasn't bad. It was just
not something that I'm crowing people like.
It was a great answer to a question nobody had.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about The Good Place episodes 3 and 4 quickly. I don't have a lot to say here because it feels like, yes, we got past those first 2 episodes that were really one episode broken into 2 parts, and so things started moving more. But they're not moving in a way that has me with a lot to talk about, except I guess the idea that Janet was bad Janet is a nice little twist and breakaway, and your belief of whether it's really Michael or not, and what that all means. That's all at the end of episode 4. The rest of it was just getting there for me.
Yeah, I loved the star of episode 3 for me was I guess twofold. We saw Jason, doing his Jason thing, getting Chidi motivated. Or maybe that's episode 4. But what's the blogger guy's name? The BuzzFeed evil dude.
I will try to find out.
It doesn't matter. Loved seeing him grow into a character and take us along on his journey. Find some redeeming moments.
Oh, and he's the perfect Tahani compliment, right?
Yes,
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. There's almost like a courtship, and it's weird because they're certainly implying that Tahani doesn't have the equipment that he's interested in, but I love the kind of budding friendship, BFF romance that's happening there.
Yeah, I think that's John, maybe.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I can't wait to dive in on is Princeton dude. I think there's tremendous my biggest hope for this season is that the Princeton entitled douchebag somehow becomes our favorite arc to follow. That would be great.
That's right, because they've done a great job of making me hate every single thing about him, and I never want to see him on screen again.
Right.
And the small amount they used him in episode 4 at the very beginning of the talk show was more than I needed. That was just enough, and I was glad he didn't come back in that episode. So they need to do something different with him soon, for me to actually care about that character, because they've almost done too good of a job of making me not give a crap other than they need to save everybody's soul.
I think in the next couple of episodes, they're going to start setting that up for us. And then also Chidi's girlfriend, man, that one interaction, I will hold up the cold open of the most recent episode, season 4, episode 4, where they're playing Magic Pictionary.
Yes.
If you've been watching, so much will land. If you've never seen a single frame of this show, it'll land well enough. It's great. That moment that deformed bow tie horse comes to life was awesome. Awesome.
I have a lot of experience taking down horses. And again, I don't have much to say about, I'm telling you that's not Michael. I don't know if I believe that Michael wouldn't take off his Michael suit to show them that he's a big octopus just because he's embarrassed. So that leads me to believe that must be a demon. But that's the kind of thing they absolutely do on purpose, and then turn it around on you later. So I'm suspicious of whether I should believe that is Michael. But the fact that it was Bad Janet, definitely didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I wish I cared a little bit more than I did, because I didn't really read that Janet was phoning it in. I mean, they firmly established that she's very busy doing an awful lot. There
are a lot of pieces that start to fall in place later. If once they reveal that, like her complaining about having to get John or Sean or whatever the BuzzFeed,
or just suggesting that
no, not the
Eleanor
guy,
punch
the Princeton guy.
Whoever.
Her always complaining about like, oh, that Princeton guy, he keeps asking me for things. Janet wouldn't do that. That should have stuck out to me. Janet wouldn't mention it. It's not in Janet's nature to talk about the other things she's doing. She never does.
Yeah. Weird that Jason is our real hero over the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, I kind of love that.
Yeah,
I think it's good for that, because they were kind of like flanderizing him a bit. They were kind of making him a big dummy.
Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah. And I like that they had him be observationally useful, because he noticed that she always says not a girl, and that wasn't just him being dumb. That was him actually being smart. Yeah. All right, on to the Righteous Gemstones series finale. What'd you think?
Man, let's keep this one short. It's great. It's a great show. All we're going to do is heap praise on everything. Everything about the greatest gift this show has given me is knowing that I now have to go back and watch everything that Edie Patterson has ever done. It's an amazing show. They do a really good job of tying everything up and setting up sort of a long-term existential crisis. It's great. It's great. Just stop listening to me and go watch it.
Yeah, I like that everybody confessed everything and it's all out in the open now by the end of this episode. Everybody knows everything about everybody, which is a great place to start the next season, because it's all going to be built on lies and secrets again. So we get all new lies and secrets for the next round.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
And it would have been so easy for them to write in a couple of unresolved whatevers, but all of the knots have been untied. There's nothing, everything is laid bare, and they're going to have things to work out. Great. It's going to be awesome to watch.
All right, on to Mr. Robot, episodes 2 and 3, which honestly, I don't have much to say about these either, because both episodes felt a lot like place setting. We got a little bit of a backstory on White Rose, which was interesting, but not so revelatory that it, was a twist that blew my mind. We certainly see a change in Elliot as he's toughening up. The only thing that is a little bit unexpected for me, and I'm mostly talking about episode 3 here, because frankly, episode 2 just blended right into episode 3 for me directly, was him being pushed by Mr. Robot to seduce the woman whose whose second factor authentication he needed to steal, the USB key thing, and then having a genuine connection moment, leaving you wondering if he will be able to pull off what he needs to. And by the end of this episode, he actually doesn't do what he was supposed to do.
Yeah, separate thing, and this is really related to the content of those episodes, but last night I went back and watched all of the very first episode of Mr. Robot, and man, oh man, was I struck by how different that show begins from where we are near the ending. Like half these people are dead, so I don't know why I would care about them. All of the plot points are trivial, and even the main conceit, later turns out to be a lie and a bad idea. It's remarkable that this show has taken us on such a journey and kept us interested the entire time through. I digging it. I have noticed, I believe all 3 of the first episodes were directed by Sam Esmail. Is that
I think
right,
the whole
Bryce?
season, maybe. Yeah.
You can really tell the Sam Esmail episodes from those that are directed by other folks. Digging it.
Yeah, I think we mentioned on Cordkillers that he will be directing all of the episodes this season, or certainly writing.
Which I believe he also did last season.
I think so. I think that's right.
All of the last season?
Yes.
Wow. I missed that. Or
he directed all of them.
He
He didn't write all of them, but he did direct all of them.
And then right at the end, we get Tyrell being very un-Tyrell to me and blundering into Elliot's apartment, shouting at the top of his lungs that he's been asked to become the CEO of the secret corporation. And gosh, isn't that great? Now we can bring them down.
Right. And then he writes down they're listening and so on.
Like when Elliot went, shh, the first time, you don't think Tyrell, being who Tyrell is, would have been like, oh, wait, what?
I mean, Look, we're long past the point where I get to request that this show keep their characters consistent. like they, it's fine. It's fine. I'm super happy that they're getting to the end.
All right, Larry Sanders Show, the Spiders episode, basically Carol Burnett and Dana Carvey. Those were our two guests.
Fine.
Who spent the most time in this. The Dana Carvey episode being about a replacement host and being scared of a replacement host, and the replacement host possibly getting his own deal at a different network, and should they allow him to keep doing that, and Larry's inability to have a vacation. And the Carol Burnett episode sort of dealing with Larry's inabilities or limits, let's say, as a comedian.
Dana Carvey, fine, great, whatever. Portray him as a villain. This is back at that time when he was, a star on the rise and so on. Fine episode. I cannot think of a time that I have laughed harder in the last few months than at the payoff of that Spiders episode. That tantric question of where is all this tension going to go out? The combination of the gargantuan talents of why am I blanking on Larry Sanders' name?
Gary Shandling.
Gary Shandling and Carol Burnett together. That was flawless. That might be some of the best sketch comedy I've ever seen in my entire life. It was so good. The
beautiful part is that Carol Burnett, master of physical comedy, whole plot point is she's good at it, Larry's not, and they finish with a physical comedy bit that kills.
A flawless physical comedy bit. And on that meta level, you realize, oh my God, it was, I'm very excited. It was very hard when you told me that I had to wait a whole extra week before I could watch 2 more episodes of this show.
Well, good news. As soon as we're done here, you can watch 2 more episodes of this show, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. Anything else on Larry Sanders?
No, it's great. It's really, really great.
Yeah, I agree. And that is it for some of our, like Righteous Gemstones is done. We will continue to talk about Mr. Robot, Good Place, and Watchmen, and Larry Sanders Show. So we've still got a lot going on because the autumn TV season really still has a lingering effect, even though we don't follow that broadcast calendar as strictly as we used to. So tune in next week for more Spoilerin Time. And thanks for supporting us at patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll spoil you again next time.
Love you.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.